Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Chris, I'm a 5th year medical student. In today's video, we're going to be discussing arguably the most important part of your US IMG residency application, and that is US clinical experience. This is a topic that is often overlooked by international medical graduates applying to the US residency, and it's often too late before they learn many of these important facts. So I thought I'd make this video just to inform as many people as possible about them so that you guys don't get caught out like I was. We're going to cover the different types of US clinical experience, which ones are generally considered the best, and how to actually go about applying to these clinical experiences. I'm also going to be covering other important pieces of information that I wish I had had 2 years ago when I started my US journey. So without any further delay, let's jump right into it. So firstly, what types of clinical experience are there? There are generally two types: electives and observerships. Electives are what most people refer to when we say US clinical experience. And the defining feature of electives is that they are hands-on. So you will have the responsibilities similar to that of a US medical student. So you get to examine patients, take patient histories, and discuss the patients with your attendings and maybe even present a patient. So all of these responsibilities are similar to that of a US medical student, and hence your attending will be able to evaluate you based on your clinical effectiveness. So electives are generally considered the best type of US clinical experience because you have that hands-on patient contact. But one extremely important thing to note: you cannot do electives, which are the best type of US clinical experience, if you've graduated already from your medical school. You have to be enrolled in a medical school in order to apply and complete these electives. Now this catches many students out because many people only realize they want to go to the US in their final year or after they've graduated, and they try and look for hands-on clinical experience in the States, and they find out that they can't get these electives. So it's extremely important. You have to try and get these electives before you graduate, and don't be caught out by this. So to apply for residency, you need 4 letters of recommendation, and you want them to be from a US-based physician in the specialty that you're interested in. So one of the functions of an elective is to go to an institution in the States. You work hard, you do lots of clinical examinations, you take histories from patients, you present your attending, and you really impress your attending. And then at the end of your rotation, you ask for them to give you a letter of recommendation that you can use for your residency application. You can get a letter of recommendation from your home institution, but if you're applying to the States, you're much better off getting a letter of recommendation from a US-based physician in the specialty you're applying to. So the second type of clinical experience is an observership. And an observership is when you are shadowing or observing a US-based physician. The key difference of an observership to an elective is that on an observership, you cannot have any patient contact. You may be able to present a case to your attendings or discuss the facts of a case with the physician that you're observing, but you can't be in the room for the history taking, you can't do any clinical examination either. So most programs won't consider an observership to be US clinical experience, but they're good to get just to flesh out your CV. In your interview, you can talk about your observerships and how they improved your love for the field and how you knew that you wanted to do the specialty after doing the observership. So they do serve a function, but for the residency application, they want to see that you've done hands-on clinical experience in the US, which you can only get from an elective. So what if you've already graduated and you want some hands-on experience? Well, for you, there's something called an externship. So externships are typically run by companies, and you pay them quite a substantial fee, and they'll pair you up with a physician based in the US, and you can rotate for a certain period of time. So these types of rotations typically run a middle ground between electives and observerships. So you may have some patient contact, but not as much as if you had done an elective. But I appreciate that, not everyone has the choice of being able to do an elective. So if you're really desperate for hands-on experience, then I would say do an elective. So if you want to apply for an elective, you need to find the website of the specific institution you want to rotate at. Navigate to the specialty homepage and then find the area of the website that talks about visiting student electives, something along those lines. Typically, there's an online form you need to fill out, and this needs to be done 6 to 12 months in advance. So in order to do an elective, there are a few things you need to know. Most institutions require you to have step 1 already, so you need to plan that out in advance. Some institutions require you to have an English proficiency test like TOEFL, and many of these programs require you to apply 6 to 12 months in advance. If you combine that with the fact that you have to complete these before you graduate, the timing becomes incredibly important. So the last thing you need to consider for electives is something that caught me out personally and didn't really fit well with my program. In order to apply for an elective, you have to have completed what these medical schools call the core rotations. The core rotations are clinical rotations that medical students in the States complete before they go on their away electives. I'll put a list on the screen right now, but things like internal medicine, family medicine, the basic stuff, and they like to have you have completed those core electives before you can apply for the elective in the States. You can apply for the elective before you've completed your core rotations, but you have to state on your application that yes, I will have completed my core electives by the time I get to do the elective. So because observerships and electives are a little bit less formal, the application requirements are less strict. So you can do it without step 1. You can apply maybe a few weeks in advance, you can get them organized, and you can do it before you've finished your clinical core rotations. So maybe if you're early in your medical career, in medical school, you can do observerships. And then once you've completed your clinical medicine years, you can do an elective. So how do you apply an observership? So it's enough just to go to the website of the institution you're looking at, find the list of physicians working there, and then find their email. Should be quite easy to find. And you want to write a nice email explaining who you are, what your goals are, your interest in the specialty. You want to attach your CV and any other important things like your Step 1 transcript if you have it. You want to give them your vaccinations. It's important just to attach everything in the first email so that there's no back and forth and everything gets sorted out as quickly as possible. So just wrapping things up, during your elective, work hard, revise your clinical examinations, okay? Revise your history taking. Really try and impress your attendings and get to know the residents there so they get to know you and they get to know your name, and hopefully when you apply there later on, they'll remember you. So when you're applying for elective, try to avoid private clinics or community hospitals that don't have a residency program because they typically can't provide you the teaching experience that you need. And make sure you get familiar with things like electronic medical records as well, because that will be extremely useful to you in the future. Okay, so thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this video was helpful to any of you out there trying to find US clinical experience. If you guys have any questions or concerns about this topic, just leave a comment down below or shoot me a message on Twitter and Instagram and I'll try and get back to you. Yeah, like and subscribe for future videos about Step 1 preparation as an IMG. I'm going to be making a video in the future about Step 2 prep as an IMG, which is going to be more important now that Step 1 is pass-fail. So get subscribed for that video. If you like this video, I'm going to make a custom playlist on the sidebar with a whole bunch of videos about US residency applications, so maybe check that out if you're interested. Alright, thank you all so much for watching. New videos coming soon. Cheers.